Fifth grade Elevate. Today we will be writing decimal fractions as decimals. A decimal fraction is a fraction that has a denominator of 10 or a multiple of 10. So here are a few examples: 7 tenths, 46 hundredths, 800, 3,000ths, right? So we are not working with fractions that look like 7/12ths because it does not have a denominator that is a multiple of 10. We're not working with fractions that are 46 over 83, right? That is not, 83 is not a multiple of 10. So our denominators that we'll be working with are multiples of 10. So commonly for today's lesson, we'll be seeing denominators of 10, 100, and 1,000, okay? Decimal fractions can be read and written as decimals. The way you read the decimal fraction is the way that you write the decimal fraction. So this is how the decimal fraction is written, 9 over 10. But we don't say 9 over 10 or 9 divided by 10. We say 9 tenths. And as a decimal, it would be written as 0.9 with the 9 in the tenths place. However, we don't say 0.9, we say 9 tenths. So the way that you read the fraction is the same way that you read the decimal. This is read as 9 tenths, and this is also read as 9 tenths, okay? So based on your intro, you'll take about 2 minutes to explain that to kids, and then based on your intro, you may want to take 1 minute to have kids explain to their partners how the two columns are different. How are these fractions different from these fractions? And some kids will go ahead and say that, well, the first column is decimal fractions and the second column reflects decimal or examples of non-decimal fractions. But what does that mean? So get them to explain the difference in the denominators, okay? So from there, you're going to take about 5 minutes to model questions 1 through 4. You are either going to be given a decimal or a fraction and then have to translate that to one another. So in question 1, you're starting with a decimal and then you have to translate it to a fraction. Question 2, you're starting with a fraction and then you have to translate it to a decimal. So make sure kiddos are paying attention to that, so that they're not getting the task confused. But before they even get to finally translate one to the other, they are going to have to place it in the place value chart. So in modeling, I want you to ask students these 3 questions. Question 1, how would you say the number in the problem? So students should say, well, question 1 asks us to write 8 tenths as a fraction. They shouldn't say 0.8. Okay. And then jump into question 2. How would you write it as a decimal? Because for every single one of these questions, they're going to have to write it as a decimal in the place value chart. So that question should actually say, how would you write it as a decimal in the place value chart? So then they're going to do this part. And then from there, how would you write it as a decimal fraction? Now, these 2 questions, depending on what the task is, you may say, how can you write that fraction as a decimal? Or how can you write that decimal as a decimal fraction? Okay, so they may be reversed. And so after you model questions 1 through 4, you are going to launch students into 10 minutes of partner practice time for questions 5 through 16. And then they are going to work independently at a volume level 0 for 5 minutes on their exit ticket. We are not going to pay too much attention to the place value. We just want to see, are they able to translate the decimal fraction into a decimal and the decimal into a decimal fraction? So it is out of a total of 4 points for this particular lesson.